When my wife, Lisa, first mentioned wanting to make new friends, I was all for it. We'd been married for 8 years, and while we were happy, I thought she was right, our social circle could use a shake-up. She said it would be good for us to meet people outside of our usual routine, bring some fresh energy into our lives. I remember her saying, "It'll make us stronger, you know. We'll have new experiences to talk about, new things to learn from others." I didn't see any harm in it. In fact, I thought it could be good for both of us. So, we started going out more. Lisa seemed especially invested in finding like-minded people, whatever that meant, and she threw herself into it, joining book clubs, going to art galleries, even taking some weekend workshops. She had this newfound excitement about her, and at the time, I thought it was nice to see her so enthusiastic about something. Then one evening, she came home from a gallery event, practically buzzing. She couldn't stop talking about a guy she'd met there named Nate. According to her, he was so interesting, so deep and into all the same art and music she was. She casually suggested inviting him over sometime, maybe for dinner or a double date with another couple. She mentioned he was single, had been through some rough relationships, and was just looking for genuine friends. I shrugged and said, sure, why not? After all, making friends was her idea. Over the next few weeks, Nate became a frequent topic in our conversations. Lisa would bring him up at random, sharing things he'd said, art pieces he'd shown her, and occasionally she'd even slip in little details about his personal life. I started to feel a pang of unease. It wasn't jealousy, exactly, but something about the way she talked about him felt different. Still, I tried to be supportive, convincing myself that I was overthinking it. Then came the night she invited him over for dinner. Meeting him was strange. He was friendly enough, but there was an odd tension in the room, one I couldn't quite put my finger on. Throughout the evening, I found myself studying Lisa's reactions around him. She laughed at his jokes in a way I hadn't seen in years, her smile lingering just a little too long. As the evening wore on, I kept trying to shake off the unease creeping into my mind. Lisa was being friendly, right? She'd always been warm and open with people. But the way she looked at Nate, the laughter that seemed a bit too genuine, the subtle touches on his arm, it didn't feel like the usual Lisa. I told myself it was nothing, that I was being ridiculous, but every instinct screamed at me that something was wrong. Over the next few weeks, Nate became a regular presence in our lives. Lisa invited him to almost every outing, from casual dinners to weekend hikes. She'd ask me if I minded him joining, and I'd tell her it was fine, not wanting to seem controlling. But every time, I couldn't help noticing how much her attention seemed to focus on him, how their conversations seemed just a bit too personal. One night, I brought it up, trying to keep my tone casual. "You and Nate seem really close," I said, hoping she'd reassure me, put my mind at ease. She gave me a playful smirk and replied, "He's just a good friend, don't worry. It's nice having someone to talk to about things we don't always connect on, you know." Her answer stung, even though she tried to say it lightly. Since when had I not been enough for her to connect with? But I brushed it off. Maybe she did need someone to talk to, and maybe this was just a phase. Relationships change over time, right? I told myself not to make a big deal out of it. But then things escalated. Lisa began staying out later, always with the same excuse, "Oh, I'm just grabbing a drink with Nate, catching up on some things." It wasn't every night, but it was frequent enough that I noticed, each time eating away at me a little more. She started dressing differently when she went out, putting more effort into her appearance, which she brushed off as just wanting to feel good. One evening, after she'd been out with Nate again, I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. As she walked in, laughing at something on her phone, I asked her directly, "Is there something going on with you and Nate?" Her face froze for a moment, but she quickly recovered, laughing it off. "What? No. He's just a friend, come on." I'd never crossed that line. But her tone felt forced, and her eyes didn't quite meet mine. That night, I lay awake, wondering if I'd made a mistake allowing Nate into our lives, allowing him so close to her. The days that followed were tense. Lisa could sense my unease, and her response was to assure me everything was fine while continuing to spend just as much time with Nate. My mind was constantly racing, replaying every interaction, analyzing every glance, every laugh. But still, I tried to push it down, to trust her, hoping that maybe I was reading too much into it. Then, one evening, she sat me down and dropped a bombshell that I hadn't seen coming. "I've been thinking," she began, looking down at her hands, "about our relationship. About how things could be, well, different." I waited, feeling my heart pound. Different how? She took a deep breath, clearly struggling to find the right words. "I've been reading up on modern relationships, about people who choose to explore connections outside of the traditional marriage structure. I think it could be something that brings us closer, something that helps us grow." I just stared at her, speechless, the meaning of her words slowly sinking in. "Are you saying, you want an open marriage?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. She nodded slowly, her eyes cautiously meeting mine. "I want us to be able to explore new connections, Dan. I think it could bring a new dimension to our relationship." In that moment, everything seemed to fall into place, the late nights, the intense friendship with Nate, her newfound interest in modern relationships. It wasn't just about making new friends or finding fresh energy, it was about Nate. She was already testing the waters, and now she wanted my permission to dive in. "So, this friendship with Nate," I said, struggling to keep my voice calm. "Is that what this is really about?" She paused, clearly caught off guard, before replying, "Nate is someone I have a connection with, yes. But I think we could make this work. We could have a modern relationship, where we trust each other to explore other connections without it threatening what we have." I felt anger rising up, a bitter, hot resentment I could barely contain. "You've already been exploring with him, haven't you?" I asked, barely managing to keep my voice steady. Her silence spoke volumes, and I felt my stomach drop. Her voice softened, pleading now. "Dan, I don't want this to come between us. I still love you, I just want us to be open to new possibilities, to people who can bring something different into our lives. It doesn't have to take away from us." But all I could think was that it already had. Her words hung in the air, each one hitting me like a punch. I stared at her, barely able to process what she was asking. "So, let me get this straight," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "You want to stay married to me, but also have a relationship with Nate?" She nodded, eyes filled with a strange mixture of guilt and excitement. "I know it sounds unusual, Dan, but people make it work. Couples are doing this all the time. It's a chance to bring something new into our lives without losing what we already have." "Without losing what we already have?" I echoed, almost laughing at the absurdity. "Lisa, we've already lost it. You've been lying to me, sneaking around with him, and now you want to make it official. How is that supposed to make anything better?" She looked down, biting her lip. "I know I went about it the wrong way," she admitted quietly. "I should have been honest from the start. But it doesn't change how I feel. I love you, Dan, but I need something more, something different. And I think you might too, if you give it a chance." The anger inside me flared. "What I need," I said, my voice hard, "is a partner I can trust. Someone who respects me enough to talk to me before starting an affair. I thought we were a team, Lisa. I thought we were building a life together. But you've been building something with someone else." Her expression softened, almost as if she felt sorry for me. "Dan, I haven't replaced you. Nate is just different. He brings out a side of me that I haven't felt in a long time. And I think if we both opened ourselves up to new experiences, it could make our marriage stronger." "Stronger?" I shook my head, struggling to believe what I was hearing. "You've already been lying to me, going behind my back with him. How do you expect me to be okay with this? She reached for my hand, but I pulled away, unable to bear her touch. Please, just think about it, she whispered. I know this is a lot to ask, but I truly believe it could work if we both try. I stood up, unable to look at her. I don't need time to think, Lisa. I need time to figure out why I'm even standing here listening to this. Without another word, I walked out of the room, leaving her alone with her modern relationship fantasies. I spent the night on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation in my head. It felt surreal, like something out of a twisted soap opera. The woman I'd built a life with was willing to risk everything we'd created for a modern relationship. The term echoed in my mind, a hollow justification for what she'd already done with Nate behind my back. How could she still say she loved me while proposing something so gut-wrenching? Over the next few days, Lisa tried to bring it up again, attempting to convince me that this was something we could explore together. She talked about all the articles she'd read, the success stories of couples who embraced open relationships and came out stronger on the other side. Each time, I felt like I was looking at a stranger, someone who was willing to prioritize her desires over the commitment we'd made to each other. I avoided her as much as I could, giving one-word answers and dodging her attempts to have deep conversations about our marriage. The more she pushed, the more the reality of her betrayal settled in. She'd already chosen Nate. I was just the one left picking up the pieces, trying to make sense of what she'd torn apart. Then, one evening, she cornered me in the kitchen, blocking any chance I had of avoiding her. Dan, please. We can't keep ignoring this, she said, her voice pleading. This silence is tearing us apart. I'm willing to talk, to work through this. But I need you to at least try to understand. I took a deep breath, struggling to keep my composure. Understand? Lisa, I can't understand how you'd throw everything away for him. How can you say you love me while you're chasing after someone else? She hesitated, her gaze dropping. It's not that simple. I love you, Dan, but Nate brings out something different in me. It's like I get to be a different person, experience something outside of our everyday life. I thought you'd want the same. I looked at her, feeling a mixture of sadness and anger. What I wanted was a life with you, Lisa. Not some experiment or modern arrangement. And honestly, I don't think I can be the husband you're looking for if this is what you want. Her face fell, the reality finally hitting her. So, you're saying you'd rather walk away than try? Yes, I replied, feeling the weight of the words settle over me. Because I deserve more than being an option in my own marriage. Without waiting for a response, I walked away, knowing that my decision had been made. The next morning, I woke up early, packing a small bag with the essentials. I couldn't stay in that house any longer, every room felt heavy with memories that had turned bitter. As I threw the last few things into my bag, Lisa appeared in the doorway, her face pale, eyes filled with a mixture of regret and sadness. You're leaving? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I looked at her, feeling a pang of sadness mixed with the weight of finality. Yes. I need space, Lisa. I need time to figure out what I want, and to be honest, I don't think that includes this modern relationship you want. She nodded, seeming to absorb my words, but then she took a deep breath. Dan, I know I've hurt you. I know I've broken something that might not be fixable. But please, don't just throw us away. We've been through so much together. Exactly, I replied, my voice firmer than I felt. We've been through so much. And still, you chose to put him, this different part of you, above what we had. You made that choice, Lisa. Now I'm making mine. I walked past her, feeling a mixture of relief and sorrow. She didn't try to stop me, and as I left, I could feel the finality of it settle over me like a cold breeze. For the next few weeks, I stayed with a friend, sorting through my emotions, trying to piece together my life. The quiet gave me time to reflect, to mourn the relationship I'd thought would last forever. I came to understand that Lisa's desire for fresh energy wasn't about us growing together, it was about her need to explore something new, even at the expense of what we'd built. Eventually, I reached out to a lawyer. It was clear to me that our paths had diverged, and there was no way back to what we once had. Lisa didn't fight the divorce. In fact, she seemed resigned, as if she'd known, deep down, that this was the only outcome. The day our divorce was finalized, I felt an odd sense of peace, mingled with the inevitable sadness of losing someone I once loved deeply. Friends and family rallied around me, offering support and reminding me of the life I could still build. Slowly, I started focusing on myself, rediscovering passions I'd let slip, hobbies I'd abandoned, and parts of myself I'd put on hold for our marriage. Months passed, and with time, the pain faded. I began to feel stronger, more grounded in who I was, without the constant need to compromise or wonder if I was enough. The betrayal had been shattering, but it had also taught me the importance of self-respect, of honoring my own boundaries. One evening, I got a message from Lisa. She simply wrote, "I'm sorry. I hope you're finding happiness." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. I'd moved on, finally free from the weight of her choices and the pain they had caused. Now, as I look toward the future, I know I'll be cautious, but I won't be closed off. I'm open to building a new life, one based on honesty and mutual respect. And if love comes along again, I'll be ready, not because of some fresh energy, but because I know what I'm worth and won't settle for anything less.